You're recording, you're going.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Nicole Fleck-Tooze with Lincoln Parks and Recreation. We've got two of us presenting here today. I have been with the City of Lincoln for nearly 25 years and with Parks and Recreation for about the past 8 years, working in different capacities.
And I'm Sara Hartzell. I'm a park planner with the Parks and Recreation Department. I've been here about 5 years and about 20 years altogether with the city. Come from a natural science education background, and then I have a master's degree in community and regional planning with an environmental emphasis.
Okay,
Yeah.
Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So obviously just wanted to kind of share an update today of where we are on the Prairie corridor on Haines branch project. I'll do the first couple of few slides today. Sara will handle the middle, and then we will circle back around to me at the end. So the Prairie corridor on Haines branch was really developed through a process where we went through the city-county comprehensive plan. And we're talking a little bit, for those of you who heard the plenary session, about how about a decade ago, we worked with the city and county, and Sara and I were both in the planning department at that time, to update the city-county comprehensive plan out to the year 2040. And in fact, as we speak, they're in the process of the next major update to that plan out to the year 2050. But at that time, and in fact, over the history of the plan, really there's been a lot in our city-county comprehensive plan about greenway, corridors, conservation of natural resources. And truly, if you look back, even back to 1948, you can see elements.
I think you muted yourself on accident.
Oh,
All right. Do we need to start again?
Where were we?
We only lost, I think, a few seconds there.
Okay, very good. So it was during the last major update of the comprehensive plan where we really sought out to better describe the Prairie corridor on Haines branch and really give it some details and direction in the comprehensive plan. That was adopted back in 2011. And it identified as one of the strategies the development of a master plan that would kind of set forth some more specific strategies for how to implement the Prairie corridor. And that in turn served as the basis for our first environmental trust grant that was submitted and received back in 2013. And that's been a great way for the project to leverage funding from matching partners throughout. So we've been at it for about 7 years now. But the master plan, as it was laid out, really identified these 3 pillars, if you will. Conservation and habitat development being one. And by conservation in this context, we mean the conservation of land through the purchase of land and easements from willing sellers. The second being the trail corridor as part of it, an economic opportunity. And then the third being education and outreach. So this is a map that's just trying to describe a little bit of context, and we like it because it really overlays the natural resource kind of landscape over the top of the political landscape. And so what you're looking at here is the Lincoln city limits and future growth year, in this case out to the year 2060, and the same for Omaha and the future growth area for the Omaha city limits. And you can really see this opportunity for the 2 metropolitan areas to connect along the Interstate 80 corridor. And then this is really overlaying again, we have Lancaster County boundary in which Lincoln sits, but overlaying on the watersheds and the natural landscape. And so outlined in white is the Salt Creek watershed draining into the Platte River. and it takes up most of Lancaster County. And it's also, of course, part of the Lower Platte River Basin, and of course draining into ultimately the Missouri River. So here you can see the context of the Haines Branch Prairie Corridor as it relates to the larger watersheds. And then here is just zooming in a little bit on that, looking at Lancaster County. Here you can see the Salt Valley Greenway that we've identified in these connecting corridors that come out at the tributaries to Salt Creek, essentially, and Haines Branch being one of those. And then this is zooming in finally on that. Again, you have this connection to the Greenway network along here, along Salt Creek and Wilderness Park. But we're zoomed in on the Prairie Corridor here, and this shows an initial priority area in purple, and then sort of a larger, so this would be the purple dash boundary, and then this sort of larger vision in the hazy golden color here to suggest that over time there's an opportunity even for future growth beyond that. So the key destinations form the bookends: Pioneers Park Nature Center and Spring Creek Prairie Audubon Center, as well as Conestoga Lake State Recreation Area that's recently undergone a major renovation. So when we studied this area during the development of the master plan, one of the things we did was to look carefully at the natural resources, tallgrass prairie, but also other features. And we overlaid these resources using a GIS mapping to develop this initial priority area. And so we started with these key destination areas, and we began to overlay those. First, the 100-year floodplain, woodlands along the corridor, the grasslands, which are comprised of some remnant prairie areas, as well as native seedings and more low diversity pasture areas. The wetlands along the corridor, and we do have some of Nebraska's eastern saline wetlands and the kind of the downstream end of Haines Branch. And so then we kind of overlaid all of those, and we use those to basically relate to this x-axis for habitat diversity along the corridor. So what were the highest value resources, and where did they really maybe overlap potentially in nature? And then look at, okay, well, if we really want this to reduce habitat fragmentation, where do we have opportunities to for habitat connectivity? So that was then the y-axis, looking at how we could interconnect all these areas. And ultimately that gave us our initial priority area boundary, which is shown in that bold black line. And this is really still a working boundary for us today. It is not a fixed boundary. And then just to talk a little bit about land conservation, when we use that as our priority areas, when we first started, we had what was shown in beige and in brown as the kind of either publicly owned or conservation, in the case of Spring Creek Prairie, conservation owned fee simple lands, and then this dark green were permanent conservation easements, and that comprised about 4,500 acres out of what is now about a 7,800 acre total corridor area shown in the gray. And since the time that we began this project, again, about in that 7-year time frame, we've been able to conserve over 1,000 acres through working with willing landowners on the purchase of land and easements. And so again, fee simple conservation shown in these areas that are beige in color, and then conservation easements shown in the dark green. In some cases, we have some overlap there where we have some more complexity in how we purchase the land. So I just took you.
Okay, I'm gonna talk a little bit about some of the habitat development work that we've been doing in the corridor. As Nicole said, we've been fortunate to be able to protect a little over 1,000 acres since the project began. And of those, we've been able to protect about 220 acres of virgin prairie and reestablish on cropland, well, mostly cropland, about 225 acres of land as well. prairie as well. We always use high diversity local ecotype seed mix when we do our restoration projects. And in addition to that, we've had some CRP lands, which are the Conservation Reserve Program lands that were already in warm season native grasses. And in those cases, we've done enhancement projects to add some of those forb resources. And the virgin prairie, in a lot of cases, needs to have a little help to get back into really good shape. And so we worked on those as well. I'm gonna walk you through each one of those. Oh, that's right. So when we have cropland, that's probably the easiest situation for us to start with as far as restoration goes. We've been typically working with the previous landowner, sometimes prior to purchase, and sometimes if we have a conservation easement with them, work through that. But we'll have the land seeded, the cropland seeded to soybeans for at least a year. That helps a lot with the crop residue that kind of tends to hang around with corn and milo. And then our preference is to do a winter seeding, typically broadcast seed on snow if we can manage to get a little bit of snow on the ground, and that really seems to help with that soil seed contact. And then for about 2 years, we will try to stay off of that property with any kind of vehicle equipment, and try to do any of our invasive control by hand, just walking in and doing that. And then 3rd year is typically a biomass removal. Burning is always preferred, but sometimes we hay because of particular circumstances. And then we start the monitoring period. Another situation, actually these are some prairies that we've restored, some of them more recently than others, but if you look in the upper right, you've got upper left, you've got our oldest restoration project, which is Denton Prairie, right adjacent to the village of Denton, open to the public. There's a trailhead there and mowed trails if you'd ever like to go out and visit that. Seeded in 2014, so it's about 6 years old now and is a beautiful prairie. Two Creeks Prairie was seeded in 2017, so you can see what a slightly younger prairie looks like. And then Honvelez and Kapke down at the bottom are our most recent seedings, our teenage prairies that are a little ragged and rough, but certainly have a lot of good start. This is just an aerial photo of that Denton Prairie. You're kind of looking to the southwest, but you can see the mowed trails through there. The trailhead sits off to the side here, but out across this wooded, it's actually a roadway, right of way there. You can see this is the Honvelez property, and then the Kapke property is just north of that. So right in the village of Denton, we've got a pretty good mass of conserved prairie. CRP lands, a lot of times we'll have some pretty good CRP that we take over. I'm thinking, Nicole, that most of them we've taken over towards the end of their CRP contract. So there's sometimes some woodies to take care of, and we almost always have to do some kind of a biomass removal. But right after that, we've been going in and drilling forb seeds into the grasses, and then suppressing those grasses for the next couple of years to let those forbs have some a chance to take over, and that's been working pretty successfully. Non-native pasture is definitely the hardest one. Most of the time they're brome dominated, and brome can be a little bit stubborn. We've been working mostly with herbicide and trying to knock back those cool season grasses with herbicide and haying ahead of time. And when we feel like we've got those pretty well suppressed, we'll go in and disc or harrow and follow with broadcast seed, or go in and drill seed direct. And then the cool season grasses, we most of the time have to keep after them for a couple of years as well. And our virgin prairie, like I said, sometimes needs a little bit of help. A lot of times woodies have invaded unless it's been hayed regularly. And even when it has been hayed regularly, it's been kind of managed to favor those grasses for hay rather than the forbs. So we have to do some biomass removal and try to open up some sunlight in the spring and get those forbs what they need. We have also done a little bit of seed collection from some of these and then use that seed to try to propagate some specific species. I have a video here. When we get to the management phase, we've been kind of rotating grazing, haying, and rest and fire. And we've got a little time-lapse video here, if I can get it to play. There we go, of a fire on Bobcat Prairie. This is done by Ethan Fries, who's a, well, now a graduated grad student from the University of Nebraska in the School of Natural Resources. But you can see the cedars that were taken down there. And then this is just a single season after a very early spring burn. So it makes a huge difference if we can get out there with fire. One of the species that we've been concentrating on is the regal fritillary. We do have records of sightings of the regal fritillary out in the corridor in different places, mostly down in Spring Creek Prairie, but they've been seen at Denton Prairie and Bobcat Prairie as well, which are kind of in the southern half of the project area. We do have a violet population on the Bobcat Prairie, which is maybe half a mile north of Spring Creek Prairie. We've worked with Prairie Plains Resource Institute to plant violet seedlings. Those are typically in our seed mix, we don't end up with violet seeds because the seeds themselves are very hard to collect and they're close to the ground. They pop open from a capsule and spread all over. And so they've developed some techniques to collect those seeds and produce seedlings. And we've been planting those in September of each year. About 500 were planted on Bobcat Prairie last September and about 900 on Martin Prairie and Prairie Plain, or in Pioneers Park Nature Center this September.
3 minutes.
And this is just a prairie plant or a violet planting. The trail, Lincoln has a strong tradition of trails, and we think trails are a good way to get people out into the prairie and have them experience it, fall in love with it, buy into this project. So trails are an important part of this project. This is a completed trails in Pioneers Park. Dash trails are ones that have not been completed yet. This trail in Spring Creek has just recently been completed, but we have several properties along the way where we have rights to build and just kind of building those as opportunities arise. We also have quite a few trail heads where you can go out and park and access those properties. A lot of them have mowed trails on them for public access. There we go. This is, oh, sorry, I hit the button too many times there, but those were some pictures of some of the trails and trailheads that we have constructed out there.
And I'll just wrap up quickly. Obviously, education, outreach, and research is also then kind of our third pillar and very important. I think the title of Chris Helzer's presentation this afternoon is "Conservation Ain't Gonna Work If No One Cares But Us," and this is in line with reaching out to people, getting them involved in the landscape through bio blitzes and celebrations on the prairie. We're building on the great work that Spring Creek Prairie Audubon Center and Pioneers Park Nature Center are already doing in a lot of aspects and outreach to children and families. And getting people out through tours. Here is the prairie violet planting that Sara described from last year. Again, just getting people out there and making the best use of all the volunteers that will want to help us out on the prairie. The research that's being done, we won't go into a lot of detail because of time, but Dr. Wadeen and PhD student Catherine Hogan are leading research out at Bobcat Prairie that Sara talked about. Here we've got 24 plots that comprise about 144 square meters of plots on 25 acres at Bobcat Prairie that are looking at different approaches to reestablishment of prairie and management and seeing what works best so we can try to apply those in the corridor. And then obviously huge partnerships on this project has been a theme already today. The primary partners here are the City of Lincoln Parks and Recreation Department, and then our private partner, the Lincoln Parks Foundation, the Lower Platte South Natural Resources District, and Audubon Spring Creek Prairie. But there's a whole long list of many other partners that are either funding partners or provided in-kind match or other resources that have been brought to bear on the project that have really helped us to bring this forward, not the least of which is the Nebraska Environmental Trust that has provided so far three-year grants for the project. It's really enabled us to leverage these other funds and support and make the progress that we have to date. And with that, we will finish here. This is the website prairieforwardorg if you would like to find more information, and we're happy to answer any questions.